In 2024, I made a video called What is the First Found Footage Horror Film, in which I try to answer said question. I'm about to spoil that video, so if you want to watch it first, I'll link it in the description so you can watch it in all of its greatness. Anyways, I concluded that The Connection was the first ever found footage movie, with the McPherson tape being the first horror movie of said genre, and America's Deadliest Home Video being the first good found footage horror film. I dive into other things in that video, but that's the gist of it. However, after I released that video, a commenter gave me the name of a film from 1930 called Ingagi without any further elaboration. And just now, I decided to really look into it and see how much validity this comment has. So thank you, Mr. Osini Krytik, because number one, you just know how to fuel my fire, and number two, digging into this movie was so interesting and crazy, I had to make a video about it. So, let's get right into it. First of all, what is Ingagi? Ingagi is a film from 1930 showing the recordings of Sir Hubert Winston of London on his adventure to the Congos in Africa. After capturing some animals and observing the life of the natives, Winston's crew runs into the Ingagi village, where the inhabitants sacrifice a woman to the Ingagi, gorillas, so they don't wreak havoc on their territory. The opening scroll explains a group of exiled women took care of a group of gorillas after being pushed away. But they came back to the village, and since the gorillas missed the company of the ladies, they attacked the village. So the natives have this feminine sacrifice to appease them. Just for the record, Ingagi means gorilla in Kinyarwanda, so that's where the name comes from. At least that's what Wikipedia says and this random translation website I found, so who knows, because there's been claims it doesn't mean anything and the term was made up for the movie. Before I get into my review of this movie and my thoughts on whether or not it's a horror found footage movie, I just want to talk about how crazy it is. The craziest thing about this movie is it was promoted as a real documentary with all the findings and footage being authentic and not staged, which is hilarious considering just about everything about this movie is fake. Only a fraction of the movie was filmed in Africa, with a lot of the footage actually from the Griffith Park Zoo in Los Angeles, which was abandoned long ago, so it now serves as a hotspot for urban exploration. Movie reviewer Gerald Perry also claimed part of the movie was filmed in California Sea Zoo. The footage that was actually filmed in Africa was illegally ripped straight from a documentary called Heart of Africa, released in 1915, that was made by an explorer known as Lady Grace Mackenzie. This angered Mackenzie's son Byron, so he sued the filmmakers Congo Pictures Ltd. and won $150,000 since the court agreed with Byron's statement about unauthorized usage. Funny enough, I couldn't find Heart of Africa anywhere online, so in a funny way, Ingagi unintentionally preserved Mackenzie's work and made sure it wasn't completely lost for years to come. Anyways, none of the Africans displayed in the movie were actually Africans, rather African Americans, I guess you could say, from around the Los Angeles area that agreed to be in the movie, but that also seems to be debatable. A few of the sources I read claimed the African woman at the end of the movie was actually a white actor in blackface, but I can't find any solid evidence on that. I'll get into this later, but the FTC looked into this movie and didn't find any evidence to support that claim, so I don't know. I'm not saying it's not possible, especially considering the time period. I'm just saying there doesn't seem to be a credible source on this. None of the gorillas seen in this movie are real either. Rather, the filmmakers created gorilla costumes for actors to hop into and to show off their wild side. Sometimes the commentary will claim the footage is displaying the Ingagi, the gorillas, but in reality, it's some other kind of great ape like orangutans and chimpanzees. Speaking of obviously fake things, there's a scene where Winston picks up a new species of tortoise and dubs it a tortadillo because it looks like a mix between a tortoise and an armadillo, but in reality, it's just a regular tortoise with scales, spikes, and wings attached to it. I guess I could see this fooling people back in 1930, considering only so much information about Africa was publicly available to Americans at this point in time, and I guess they wouldn't be shocked at the possibility that significantly different wildlife exists in a significantly different part of the world, but yeah, nowadays anybody can tell you that's fake as shit. There was speculation that Ingagi was fake after its release by a couple of critics who had seen the movie, which led a movement that aimed to force Congo Pictures Ltd. To disclose or prove the authenticity of their film, but these outcries really didn't do much. There was, however, an organization known as the Hayes Office that had an axe to grind with Ingagi. The Hayes Office was a group from the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America, which regulated the type of content that could and couldn't be shown in films, and it seems they had some kind of axe to grind with Ingagi because it was misleading and completely fraudulent in its claims, which, just for the record, wasn't against their code at this time. Funny enough though, one could argue Ingagi went against the excessive nudity and questionable sexual content parts of the MPPDA's code, which led certain theaters to drop Ingagi and certain theaters to pick up Ingagi since it was this forbidden tape that no one should ever see, and Homo sapiens just love seeing what they shouldn't. Just for the record, the MPPDA didn't ban such things for prudish reasons, no. This organization wanted to make sure films were clean and not too inappropriate because they were afraid the US government would have created their own kind of censorship that would have been a lot stronger than whatever rules they would impose. For anybody that doesn't know, films were not under the protection of the First Amendment during this time, as decided by the Supreme Court in 1950 in the Mutual Film Corporation versus Industrial Commission of Ohio case. So the US could hypothetically prosecute and do whatever they like when it came to movie releases and their content. To avoid such a thing, the MPPDA was created to keep things clean and to avoid government interference. Just for the record, this decision was overturned in 1952 with the Joseph Burstyn Inc. versus Wilson case, and films didn't have to follow the code proposed by the MPPDA. But during the 1930s, that could have meant potential prosecution over a film's content, so a lot of filmmakers stayed within the lines. Anyways, Ingagi went to gross over $600,000, or so Congo Pictures Ltd claimed they did, despite all the rumors of fraud and Hayes' watchful eye. But things started to go a little downhill after this. After questions over the film's legitimacy arose, the film's creator, Nat Spitzer, claimed 85% of the film was authentic, as to save some face, I guess. The MPPDA did their own investigation into the legitimacy of the film's claims, and after finding out a lot of the scenes were recorded in the US and not in Africa, they quote-unquote banned the film. I put banned in quotations because after the ban, Hayes said there was no ban and it was merely a suggestion. In reality, it seems Hayes' decision to ban the movie would have been bad press for the MPPDA because it came off as a monopolistic move, and to not seem tyrannical and potentially not anger the US government because they don't like monopolies, they lifted the quote-unquote ban. Regardless, since theaters were canceling Ingagi showings because of this quote-unquote ban, Congo Pictures sued Hayes for over $3 million in damages because they didn't like the fact the MPPDA called their movie fraudulent in its claims. Seriously, how could they make such an absurd claim? Whatever happened to this lawsuit, I don't know. I just found it in this issue of Variety magazine from July 1930. The Federal Trade Commission did get skeptical a few years after Ingagi's release, leading to an investigation on the film's legitness from the US government. Much like my research, the FTC found out the entire thing was fake and ordered Congo Pictures Ltd a cease and desist, which stated they could no longer advertise their movie as authentic and put it in theaters. Well, that's all I had to say about the history of this film. Let's get into the review and my opinion on whether or not it's a true found footage horror film. The movie itself is pretty boring. Well, let me put it this way. The main action, the Ingagi village drama, doesn't happen until about 20 minutes of the movie remain. So viewers have to sit through an hour of the film until they can get into the real good stuff. The rest of the footage is Winston commentating on a specific animal they found, him and his crew shooting or subduing the animal in order to consume it, or take it back to where he came from, rinse and repeat. There's a few scenes of the Africans doing their specific activities and rituals, but they're pretty short and aren't really that fulfilling considering they're not actual things Africans do, so it's not like it's informative. There's really no story or narrative to carry this movie along and keep viewers interested. It's just the same thing over and over again until the gorillas appear. I understand this film is trying to emulate a documentary, but it would have been way more interesting if the filmmakers came up with the craziest stuff they could think of and make that a movie with the Ingagi at the end. If it's all fake, what difference does it make? Apart from that stuff, the Ingagi part isn't really that great either, and the only reason it's the best part of the movie is that it has the most amount of action and sort of has a story to it. Even then, the audience can hardly get a good look at the gorilla considering it's obscured most of the time by the scenery, so it really fails to have adequate build-up and release attention seen in horror films. Why they couldn't have done a short film that ran for about 30 minutes instead boggles my mind. First of all, this movie's main focus is the Ingagi. It's all over its advertising and even hypes it up with the opening scroll. Yet the Ingagi village isn't there until the end of the film, and the Ingagi action only lasts for like 5 minutes. The first hour is essentially filler. Boring filler too. If this movie kept its story but cut out the filler, it put some extra time into exploring the other rituals or noteworthy things in the village before getting into the Ingagi, it could have worked as a great short film. Not to mention, they could have saved time and effort by not having to commentate on the stock footage from the first hour of the movie and then had to edit it. It also would have been nice if they didn't have to steal footage from Grace Mackenzie in terms of blatant theft, and the fact this cost them a big chunk of money due to Mackenzie's son successfully suing them for doing so. So, with all that, would I consider this movie found footage? Found footage? Maybe. Horror? Not so much. This might seem unnecessary, but I think we need to discuss what makes found footage. And yes, I know I went over this in the last video regarding this topic, but I know there's some viewers here that didn't watch that one, and regardless, I have some other insight regarding this genre not present in that video. In my opinion, there are 3 big aspects that a movie must have in order to be considered true found footage, one of which is missing in this film. And again, this is just my opinion. You can disagree with me if you so please. Number 1, I think the most important aspect of found footage is that the presented material was sourced from someone's visual recording of some kind of event or events presented in the way of a story, a narrative that flows. This isn't necessary, but it would also be nice if there was some kind of allure to the found footage, like it's been banned or it won't be released due to its shocking content. It gives the movie some immersion and hypes up the actual shocking footage. Number 2, the film needs to be completely found footage from start to finish, with the exception of the intro and credits. Otherwise, the film has elements of found footage but isn't true found footage. Number 3, the person or persons recording the visual part of the movie had to be commentating on the events as it's happening. In a way, the camera is a character. Every movie I reviewed in the last video has this aspect, and just about every other found footage movie I could think of, like Cloverfield, Paranormal Activity, or VHS, has this element. This movie sort of has this element in that Winstead commentates over his adventure and gives his thoughts on what his crew recorded, but it's really not the same thing in my opinion. The magic of having the camera as a character is that the scares and tension feel personal and more real in that it feels as if the monster is out to get the audience because of how close they get to the camera and want to destroy the person recording. It also makes the film relatable too, because the cameraman knows as much about the supernatural creature as much as the audience does, so the audience has to cheer for the cameraman if they want to see the story get concluded and to unravel the mystery regarding what force is attacking the characters. The cameraman in this movie are, most of the time, far from the danger, and the times that they are close to the danger, the shocking footage is hardly shown. For example, when the Ingagi is finally captured, viewers get to see the close-up shot of the gorilla being subdued for a few seconds before the crew comes in and takes it away. I feel like it would have been more unsettling to see the Ingagi squirm and have its eyes shut before its life is over, rather than just showing it for a quick moment. Speaking of the found footage aspect of this movie, there's this scene where one of the cameramen is trying to capture footage of a lion, but as he's doing that, it cuts to a shot of someone recording him cranking the camera. First of all, this would imply there's someone in front of this cameraman recording him recording the lion, but that's clearly not the case because there's not a second cameraman present in the bird's eye view shot. Not to mention, this other cameraman is not in the footage of the first cameraman. So, how's all this work exactly? Look, he's right in front of the camera guy getting the lion footage. What the hell is this? Secondly, why on earth would you do that? What's the point of getting in front of the cameraman and recording him when there's a dangerous lion in the general vicinity? I know the movie mentioned the cameraman were only focused on getting footage, even if it meant getting hurt in doing so, but why record the first camera guy if he's not really emoting at all? If he showed some fear, it could have added some tension to the scene, but no, this guy doesn't even flinch, so again, what's the point of this? Alright, sorry, I got carried away there, but that really irked me as I went back to the movie again, so let's get back on course. While I agree this movie has elements of found footage in the same vein as Cannibal Holocaust, it's not a true found footage horror film considering the camera as a character aspect is missing from it. And maybe it's just me, but there's a few shots in this movie that feel omnipotent, like the scenes where they record the cameraman. Additionally, I also have a hard time calling this movie a horror film. Think about any horror movie you've ever seen before. Throughout the entire movie, the film, at the very least, tries to create tense scenes and moments where the viewers are on the edge of their seats, unsettled at the unnerving scenario the characters are in. There's some kind of supernatural or powerful entity that's after the characters that will fight to the death to see their demise. Ingagi is fairly peaceful and calmly directed for the majority of the film. Things don't get real tense until the very end. So can I really call this a horror film if it's a horror film for like 5 minutes? Now here's the thing. I had to cut this movie a lot of slack when it comes to these two things because this was 1930. The many film conventions we come to expect in movies made nowadays came from years of filmmakers experimenting with these genres and finding out what did and didn't work with said genres. Since only so many films were filmed and publicly released at that time, it's not fair to critique it by the standards we have in the current day considering they weren't there at all. This puts me at a crossroads. It's totally a horror found footage movie considering 1930s film standards, but not so much today, so I'm not sure how I should conclude this. As I did research for this video, I noticed Wikipedia also doesn't list Ingagi as a horror film from the 1930s, but that could be due to its obscurity. But the reason I bring this up is because I noticed that the original Frankenstein, Dracula, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde movies were released a year after Ingagi, which are no doubt horror movies in every sense, and were made before modern horror film conventions, so now that I think about it, I don't really think Ingagi should be considered a horror movie because, well, only a year after it released, we had classic horror films. Well, those are my thoughts on Ingagi and some of the other crazy crap regarding its release. There's a few other things I want to mention before ending this video. First of all, it seems this film may have led to the creation of King Kong. You see, Ingagi was released in a lot of theaters owned by the Radio Keith Orpheum Company, and seeing the success of the film had RKO wanting more. So, despite being in the middle of the Great Depression, they greenlit King Kong because they figured American audiences will want more of the thrills that came with Ingagi. To quote film historian Andrew Arish, "Gorillas plus sexy women in peril equals enormous profits." Congo Pictures Ltd didn't learn their lesson the first time because they went on to create another pseudo-documentary called New Mapu, Cannibalism, and guess what? They claimed everything in that film was real as well. Here's the thing, I can't find anything on that film or any kind of information relating to its content other than this IMDb page. The only reason I know it's connected to Ingagi is Wikipedia claims the commentary track on Ingagi's Blu-ray release brings up said movie. I don't have the Blu-ray release, so I have no idea how true this claim is or what the commentator Brett Wood said about it. Post-edit Doge Buddha here. As soon as I finished the script, I wrote a message regarding this movie to Kino Lorber, the company Wood works at, and he got back to me stating he didn't really know much aside from what's already out there on the internet, so who knows what's up with this movie. Oh, speaking of which, Ingagi had a Blu-ray release back in 2021 which presented the film in 4K and uncompressed audio, although I can't imagine how much that helps with the film made in 1930, but hey, what do I know? There's a movie called Son of Ingagi, but it has no relation to Ingagi at all, and it's not even found footage. I wonder if this movie got the word Ingagi from Ingagi because, as I mentioned before, there wasn't much mention of the word being a legit word for gorilla, but perhaps someone on that crew knew a thing or two about African languages. Well, that's Ingagi, which could be considered by some the first found footage horror film, but I say otherwise. To me, it's a mockumentary with found footage elements due to missing the camera as a character aspect. And its horror genreification also hangs on by a thread due to not following horror movie conventions. It's also not really worth watching considering it's not really that interesting, and it's a rather slow-paced film with all the action happening at the very end. If this was an actual real documentary, then perhaps the first hour would have been worth watching, but since it's fake as shit, there's something to be learned here. Everything besides the actual film's content was pretty interesting to learn about though, from the promotion that it was a real documentary to the battles with Hayes' office, and the FTC finally conducting their own investigation and ordering a cease and desist was quite the ride for me. Well, that's all I had to say about Ingagi. Let me know what you think about Ingagi in terms of its content, and whether or not you think it's a true found footage horror film. Otherwise, have an amazing day.